Paycor provides payroll and HR software to small and medium businesses. We have over 40,000 clients in a variety of industries, and from recruiting and onboarding to benefits and payroll, our clients want to make an impact in their organization, and we help them do that. We're a fast-growing company, and we have plans to grow even faster, and to accomplish that, it's critical that we are always focused on improving sales productivity, and GeoPoint helps us do just that.
GeoPoint is an amazing tool that's helped us to be more productive in the field. It's helped us to increase the number of prospects that we're getting in front of, and it's just amazing technology that helps us be more prepared in the field. My team absolutely loves using GeoPoint. It saved them a tremendous amount of time, and so we've seen almost 2.5 more drops per week when we're using GeoPoint.
I use GeoPoint on my mobile app on an almost daily basis. It actually is very strategic in the ability to optimize a specific route and get through that route in the most efficient way possible. It allows me to visualize my geographic territory, see where the concentration of my prospect accounts are, and know where I'm going to spend the majority of my time so that I'm actually able to hit a much higher level of accounts that I would not otherwise be able to hit. Because of its integration with Salesforce, I'm able to click directly into the opportunity that I'm working on and add notes, add the visit, and log the drop that I may have done to that location. GeoPoint is an integral part of our sales process, and the utilization of it across our sales team is really impactful in us being such a successful organization.
As a territory analyst, I help create and equalize everybody's territories within their separate regions. It's really important to have GeoPoint so that we can manage the data so that our sales leaders can focus on managing their people.
GeoPoint has been a big win for our sales organization. When we were evaluating a mapping solution, we looked at a couple of different options, and ultimately we selected GeoPoint. These days, users are looking for intuitive, easy-to-use technology, and GeoPoint is just that. If you have sellers who are out in the field, GeoPoint is a no-brainer. It really helps them be more productive, maximize their time, and make sure that they're optimizing their client visits while they're out in the field.
We were just a bunch of nerdy kids who ignored the haters. We took their ridicule and we built on it. And when some of us gave up, well, we built on that too. Built resilience, built on a mission to make things a little better every day until the users came. Then the haters were VCs who scoffed at our audacity. This just isn't the way things are done. But we kept building. Users turned into teams, turned into companies, running their entire businesses on our apps. Then the software giants came after us. We weren't proven, we weren't fully featured, our radical cloud model wasn't secure. But we built on. And today, as companies adopt the cloud to move faster, teams are finding themselves slowed down by each other's efforts. The skeptics are claiming we'll never develop innovation at scale. But now, DevOps have come to the cloud, ushering in a new era of transformation. Companies can release on demand across hundreds of environments, innovating faster with fewer conflicts and fewer disruptions. There will always be challenges. There will always be naysayers. And we'll build on.
Okay, so here we are. This is me, Missy Longshore. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I'm on Twitter at Missy Longshore. I am on LinkedIn. I do only connect with folks that I have met in person or I know through some other way so that I know how to, recommend your work if other people say, hey, I know that you know this person. So therefore, I just request that if you're going to connect with me on LinkedIn, you go ahead and use that follow button. Or if we know each other or have met, just send me a personal note and let me know how we've met because I have been fortunate to attend many Salesforce events and sometimes I just need a little help remembering where we've met. So thank you for that. Also, the Trailblazer community is a great place to connect with me, and I'm in the Power of Us hub as well. So give me a follow in those places and we can continue to connect. Okay, so who am I? I love dogs. I am on Twitter, as I mentioned. This is one of my favorite ones to follow. So in case you can't read the small text, it's at dog_rates. This is Jax. He's glad you finally woke up, thinks it's time to have a little chat. If you're going to be home all the time, he expects some help around the house. 13 out of 10. So I just, I need something to smile about. I think we all do these days. So dogs generally, well, always bring a smile to my face. I don't currently have a dog, so I rely on internet dogs. And this is a snapshot of when I was awarded an MVP for the 4th time. This is the first time that I actually kind of told people about it, because previously I had let my imposter syndrome take over and didn't really think that I deserved the recognition for my, things that I had done for the community. But this time I was like, you know what, actually I have worked hard. I am really passionate about the Salesforce community. So I was happy to actually notify people, including my family, that had happened, even though most of my family has no idea what it means. So that's why I really enjoy events like this, where we're able to hang out with each other and acknowledge and support and learn from each other. So I think that's super fun. I am not a Salesforce architect. I currently have 5 certifications. One of them does technically fall under the architect pyramid, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I became interested in the architect path when I, got to know a little bit in my travels some architects like Rivi de la Paz and Stephen Chan, who I was fortunate enough to work with at my last role, and realized that they are calm, clear, and kind communicators. They're super smart, and they're not egotistical know-it-alls. They, work with others and are, supportive and really solution oriented. And I was like, oh, well, I like a lot of those qualities and characteristics. I'm really interested in this path. Let me learn more. And I really appreciate what Salesforce has done to try and, kind of broaden the range of people who can follow the architect path, because architects are really leaders, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So more on a personal note, I do live in Wellington, New Zealand. So if you guessed that, that's awesome. It is 10 a.m. on Sunday morning here. So it's great that we have people from all over the world. Just make sure you take care of yourself, get sleep, water, all those things as we're participating in this 24-hour event. So that's me at Hobbiton on the right. New Zealand's a wonderful country. I am originally from the United States, in case you can't tell by the accent. And I'm very fortunate that New Zealand is now my home. On the left, in case you're wondering what's going on there, on February 21st of this year, I was on a backpacking trip with the Wellington Tramping and Mountaineering Club, and I stepped in a hole, which is just off screen there, and I broke my ankle in 3 places. I was helicoptered out of off of this trail and flown to Wellington Hospital. And 10 days later, I had surgery where they put pins and a plate in my ankle. And so I have basically been virtually bedridden since then. And I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to, definitely not sure when I'll be able to get out on a trail like this again. I probably won't be able to go backpacking again, but it's been a journey, and I've put off some of my certification study, but also since I have been home since then, I have been able to avail myself of some Salesforce courses. I took a Pardot course, I took a communities course, and I've really been appreciating all of the virtual events that people have been putting on, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to attend, because I don't leave my house currently, as is true for many of us. So I'm really grateful to the community for doing so much to keep all of us engaged while we are at home. And I am on the mend. I'm learning to walk again. I use a walker and crutches, and you know, certainly my plans have changed, but, you know, I will get there day by day. So, okay, so what is an architect? Apologies for the dark text on the dark background. This is the only image I could find. So Ruth is the architect mascot. If you're not familiar with her, on the right-hand side, I'm personally enjoying all the many outfits that she has in the presentations I've seen recently. So an architect, you know, the definition of an architect or a Salesforce architect is really interesting and evolving, I think. And so I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. So when I said that I don't have, or I said that I kind of have one architect certification, I was referring to Platform App Builder in the lower left-hand corner of the pyramid. So I used to have the old developer certification. I took the transition exam. So I just kind of have that one by default, I think. I was studying, before my accident, I was studying for sharing and visibility designer. Ladies Be Architects has a lot of great free resources online if you're looking to study. Oh, and also I had planned a trip. First, my trip was to Sydney World Tour, and then that was canceled because that was reimagined as a virtual event due to COVID-19. Then I rescheduled that plane ticket for Sales Trailhead Boot Camp, which was supposed to be in Australia in July. That ticket actually is still good, might get rescheduled because airline schedules are a mess if any of you have had tickets to go anywhere, but that has since been postponed. So hopefully at some point I'll still get to take myself to Trailhead Boot Camp as an investment in my architect path, but that's the other reason why my architect path has been delayed. So, you know, things are out of our control these days. So that is one of the main places, is a Trailhead Bootcamp. I believe they only happen in Australia, Spain, and in association with Trailhead DX, which, in case you don't know, is virtual this year. I believe June 24th is now the date. It was just announced. So very interesting how, you know, we're moving up in the architect ranks without some of these resources available. So should be really interesting couple of years. So these specializations are more expensive exams and tend to be much more difficult than the standard exams. So that's what you see at the bottom of the pyramid, and those are labeled as specializations. Then we have domain architect, which you get automatically after you obtain these bundle of certifications down below. And then we have certified technical architect, which is at the top and is notoriously difficult to obtain, but is really, you know, a great challenge if you think you are interested in that. So there's kind of some discussion around, you know, who is an architect, who gets the architect title. There, of course, are architects in other, you know, domains than besides Salesforce. So I wanted to ask all of you, oh, sorry, before I do that, I put out on Twitter, and thank you to everyone who chimed in. What is a one-word characteristic that comes to mind when you think about an architect? And people were very generous in their responses, including many CTAs themselves that I heard back from. And I got words like resourceful, generous, confident, curious, innovative, big picture, tenacious, deep, thoughtful, patient. So I'm curious to hear from you in the chat what other words come to mind when you think of the word architect. So a one-word characteristic for architect, you can go ahead and put that up in the chat if you have any thoughts on that. And I am, again, going to try and open that panel. And I think it may have floated off my screen somewhere, but hopefully in a second, someone will put something in the chat and then I can see it. All right, let me go ahead and try and, there we go. Okay, perfect. Problem solver, purposeful designer, multifaceted, critical thinker, inspiring, king of the board, leader, not shy in saying no if it causes massive debt, expert creative, company builder, cautious for client needs, seeing the big picture from 5,000 feet view, detail oriented, jack of all trades, productive, innovator, good communicator, cross-domain and cross-technology, puzzle solver, excellent. So manager, passionate, Salesforce God, trainer. Well, so what you see from the vast majority of these is that these are not things that are done enterprise technology specialist. So besides enterprise technology specialist, the vast majority of these are not things that are on the Salesforce certifications that we all study for, right? And a lot of us love to study for certifications. I know, even though I'm really bad at multiple choice tests, visionary, wide open to new possibilities, a lot of these things are not on certification exams, right? And yet when you get to that point where you want to take the CTA exam, a lot of what they are asking you to do and be is not covered on any trailhead. Well, there's some trailheads, but very few. It's not covered in a multiple choice exam, and that sort of thing. Yeah, understanding the costs associated with different options, being able to kind of lobby for those different options, being able to diplomatically point out, maybe we should pursue this or that sort of thing, What do I think about people who have self-labeled themselves as an architect but have none of the certs in the architect pyramid and seem to have no desire to do so? So obviously that's a very interesting challenge. So we're going to get to that next, Jolene, while we have that conversation. So let's go ahead and jump there now. So that is my question for all of you. And I don't know why every time. Okay, so this is my question. What is your, there we go. Okay, what is your background, Salesforce or non-Salesforce? So I invited a wide variety of people. I did see that someone raised their hand. If you wouldn't mind using the chat, that would be great. So Salesforce or non-Salesforce, getting a lot of Salesforce coming through the chat. If you can go ahead and use the chat instead of raising your hand, that would be great. Okay, so we have some both. .NET, non-Salesforce for 15 years, 40 years of everything, 20 years non-Salesforce. Okay, so we have a variety, both for 15 years. Mobile and Salesforce, 80% non-Salesforce, SAP then Salesforce. Great, so just a reminder that you can have non-Salesforce backgrounds. A lot of people bring a lot of different skills to the table, and I hugely appreciate that. So that's awesome. Okay, so next question. Do you have a Salesforce certification, architect certification or not? That's what we say here in New Zealand. Okay, so we have a bunch of NAs, yes, both. Application architect 2 weeks ago. So this could be anything in the pyramid. So if it's the bottom of the pyramid, that's okay. One of the specialist exams. Application architect, Jolene, yes. Platform app only, I'm with you, Kathleen. PD1, great. 3 of the 8, that's amazing. 1 more for application architect. Platform app builder, great. 6 of 8, wow. Okay, so a lot of people. PD1, that's fantastic. That's a very challenging exam. And again, depends on your background, right? So different exams will be challenging for different people. Great, so we have a lot of people who have different experience. And, I attended another, session recently who said, anyone who has any of those exams is an architect, So it's a really interesting debate. And I used to really firmly feel that only people with the CTA should call themselves architects. Now I don't believe that so much. And it's in part because of this book. So it's really interesting, and I think it's a conversation we should continue on Twitter or in the Trailblazer community, because I don't know if there's any, right answer. So that's my next question is, do you have the word architect in your title? It's a mindset, not a certification. I think that's good. So we're getting some yes, some no. Integration architecture. We're going to be talking about Dare to Lead today. So solution architect is a title. Lead consultant is a title. Lead, yep, no and probably never will. Hi, Stuart. developer team lead, yep, senior admin, marketing cloud architect. Yeah, okay, yep, great. Technical consultant, yep. So there's a wide variety of titles out there. But it's funny because as we're getting back some of these titles, I'm thinking, wow, you really act as an architect in that role. Manager for development and testing, yeah, you're definitely acting as an architect. And you're definitely acting as a leader. So that would, yeah, you definitely consider yourself a solution architect because of your context, even though you only have 2 years of Salesforce experience. Yeah, technical expert. And yes, but you've also seen it used as a pretty non-technical term to mean a kind of BA and planner. Technical solution advisor. Yeah, so what we see is that there's a broad range. And so for the purposes of this conversation today, I would say let's use a little bit broader, a little bit broader term, and let's be a little bit more inclusive, and let's put ourselves on that path, because these are skills that are important, and these are the skills that are really needed, I would argue, as we move forward, because Salesforce is getting, I don't want to say easier and easier to use, but in general, Salesforce is not as complex as some of the other programs, other software platforms that are out there, right? And so in order to be unique contributors, the values that we can bring to the table are all these characteristics that you mentioned earlier, right? We can be, resourceful, we can be solution oriented, we can be leaders, essentially. So that's what I would advocate. And so the question becomes, how do we get those skills? Well, I would argue that this book, Dare to Lead, is one of those ways. So let's dive into it. So it's written by this woman, Brene Brown. If you're not familiar with her, she is a researcher at the University of Texas. She gave a Salesforce talk primarily to Salesforce small business customers. It was sponsored by Essentials on April 30th. And it was great. Unfortunately, it's not publicly available. If you didn't register beforehand, thousands and thousands of people attended, which is funny because I saw it barely publicized. She's an author, she's a speaker. I would say that she's a storyteller. She's a friend of Oprah. That's how she became pretty well known. She also gave a very famous TED Talk on vulnerability. I would highly recommend that you watch. It has over 47.5 million views at the time that I wrote this a few weeks ago. She really loves large hoop earrings and Texas, if you're not aware, but now you know. She also has a Netflix special, which I'll refer to later. So what is this book, Dare to Lead, about? So some of the subtitles, say it all, and I'm going to encourage you to go to this website of daretolead.brenebrown.com, and because there's going to be resources that I'm going to refer to today. I'm also going to be reading a number of passages from the book, and I will give you the page numbers. So the book says, so the book subtitles are Brave Work, Tough Conversations, and now of course I moved the chat in my way, Whole Hearts, and Daring Greatly and Rising Strong at Work. So she has written previous books called Daring Greatly and Rising Strong. This book, I think, is the most practical, and it has a lot that we can apply. So again, those skills that are not as easy to learn through certifications and that sort of thing, I think this book offers a lot. It's certainly not perfect, neither is she herself, but it offers a lot. And so I tried to pull out what we could do, what we could apply today. Okay, so what does she say about architect leadership, or you could even call this Salesforce leadership if you're more comfortable with that? So she talks about vulnerability and trust, and this is my personal summation. She talks about vulnerability and trust, having a safe container / psychological safety on your team, the group that you're working with, people on your sprint, whoever those people are, And then she talks about armored versus daring leadership. And so the way I add this all up and summarize it is that successful architects lead through feelings. So I know that's probably not necessarily what you wanted to hear, but what I want to be careful about what I'm saying here is that we're not leading with feelings. We're not leading in spite of feelings. We're acknowledging that feelings exist. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, if I don't in some way have tools to acknowledge people's humanity and what's going on in their own world and stuff like that, I can get into trouble on projects because I'm not able to manage everything. So I want to go ahead and tell you there we go. Okay, so the quote is, leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behavior. So, and it's that last part that really resonated with me. So I'd love for you to put into the chat on a scale of 1 to 10, how much that resonates with you. So a scale of 1 to 10, does that quote resonate with you? And while you do that, I'm going to, 10 meaning it resonates a lot, 1 meaning it does not resonate. While I read you something from page 67 to 68 in Dare to Lead. I'd ask you to calculate the cost of distrust and disconnection in terms of productivity, performance, and engagement. What this means is that we must find the courage to get curious and possibly surface emotions and emotional experiences that people can't articulate or that might be happening outside their awareness. If we find ourselves addressing the same problematic behaviors over and over, we may need to dig deeper to the thinking and feeling driving those behaviors. Another thing, when we're in tough rumbles with people, we can't take responsibility for their emotions. They're allowed to be pissed or sad or surprised or elated, but if their behaviors are not okay, we set the boundaries. I know this is a tough conversation. Being angry is okay. Yelling is not okay. I know we're tired and stressed. This has been a long meeting. Being frustrated is okay. Interrupting people and rolling your eyes is not okay. I appreciate the passion around these different opinions and ideas. The emotion is okay. Passive-aggressive comments and put-downs are not okay. And don't forget one of our favorite Rumble tools, the timeout. When Rumbles become unproductive, call a timeout. Give everyone 10 minutes to walk around outside or catch their breath. In our organization, everyone is empowered to call a timeout, and we all do it when we need it. Sometimes a team member will say, I need time to think about what I'm hearing. Can we take an hour and circle back after lunch? I really appreciate that because it leads to better decision making. So Christiane said 7,340, 3,456. Great. So on that website, there are quotes like this and other ones that you can get. So again, Dare to Lead .brenebrown.com, and there's a workbook on there. So section 4, when you go to that website, number 4, if you scroll down, is where you can get quotes like this and other ones. I just happen to take a screenshot of the book. Yeah, so the important thing about the F word, so I called it the F word, is feelings, because I have spent, particularly as a woman, you know, I have spent my 20-year career really trying hard to divorce my feelings from my career because I want to be taken seriously. But what I like about this is that she's being really practical. She says, if you watch that opening video, she says, this is not the time where we're like crying at work, right? Because we're trying to be vulnerable. She's like, this is more like what these examples are that I just read. So we're going to keep going. So I saw that it resonates a lot with people and not so much with some other people, and that's totally fine, but generally pretty high numbers. So great, thank you for your feedback. Vulnerability, we're not going to cover in depth today because that's covered in her TED Talk and anything that you've read or seen about her, but she says we need trust to be vulnerable, and we need to be vulnerable in order to build trust. Again, this is not crying at work. For her, this all adds up to courage. We need to be courageous leaders, and we need to be able to have difficult conversations at work and with our teams. So how do we do that? We communicate. This is a download from that website. It's a good quote. She refers to it a lot. If I haven't already, I highly recommend the audio book version of this book. I got the audiobook version from the library, and then I bought the paperback because I have it all marked up. So clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So when you're being clear with your team, you are being kind. So what do we need to communicate? We need a safe container. A lot of you who've been around the Salesforce block more than once may remember that we used to have this, this training org called universal containers. So I was like, oh, that's such a great metaphor for a safe container. Well, so I did a image search, and there's actually a universal containers company. So that's maybe why we've moved on to AW computing and other trial orgs. But anyways, these are images from universal containers, which I believe is based in the UK somewhere. So what is a safe container or container building? So building a safe container is the process of establishing the ground rules of a group. What rules need to be in place for people to feel safe, to communicate, and to freely express their ideas and concerns. Taking the time to create a safe container builds trust and improves communication. And in order to do this, you can ask the team members what they need to feel safe. So, sorry, just getting my reference here. Okay, so I'm gonna go to page 35 and 36 and read you another example, because I feel that these explicit examples helped me the most when I was trying to understand this. So during a time of difficult change and uncertainty, anyone going through that? Anyone? Daring leaders might sit with their teams and say, these changes are coming in hard and fast, and I know there's a lot of anxiety. I'm feeling it too, and it's hard to work through. It's hard not to take it home, it's hard not to worry, and it's easy to want to look for someone to blame. I will share everything I can about the changes with you as soon as I can. I want to spend the next 45 minutes rumbling on how we're all managing the changes. Specifically, what does support from me look like? What questions can I try to answer? Are there any stories you want to check out with me? And any other questions you have? I'm asking everyone to stay connected and lean into each other during this churn so we can really rumble with what's going on. In the midst of all this, we still need to produce work that makes us proud. Let's each write down one thing we need from this group in order to feel okay, sharing and asking questions, and one thing that will get in the way. So I thought that was a powerful example. I know we're getting short on time. Yeah, it is a real company. Oh, Cloud Kicks, yes. Okay, so I love these real examples. I lost my job because of COVID-19. I know there's probably others of you in the room who did or have or are about to as well. This is not what my leaders said at my Salesforce consulting team, and I wish that they had. I think that would have demonstrated real leadership and would have made me feel better about losing my job. I've had projects go really difficult. Thank you. I've had projects go, really sideways, and they say pear-shaped here in New Zealand. And, if someone had stood up and said this, a Salesforce leader, something else, that would have really helped. It would have really helped to move the project forward and make it more successful. So this is not, these are real situations. And I think that this is, helpful to, these are concrete examples of things that can really help people and help, us to move forward. Okay, so armored versus daring leadership. We can use this as an example. So sorry, there's so many nice comments in the chat. I'm getting distracted. So there's armored and there's daring leadership. I'm realizing the time, so I want to move quickly, but basically she talks about the idea of, there's a lot of lip service to the idea of bringing your whole self to work. This is page 73. But she doesn't see a tremendous amount of meaningful, actionable support for integration and wholeheartedness in most companies. The slogan is easy. The behaviors to support the slogan are not. In teams and organizations where heart and emotion, especially vulnerability, are seen as liabilities, the culture, or in some cases individual leaders, strike a bargain with our grifter egos to lock up the heart and seal off feelings. They reward armor like perfectionism, emotional stoicism, the false compartmentalizing of our lives and our work, keeping things easy and comfortable instead of embracing the necessary, tough, and awkward conversations, and they value all knowing over always learning and staying curious. So that's why I thought that was so important, is because it can be very tempting, especially for me as a Salesforce leader, to pretend that I know everything, right? It's very tempting, especially as, you know, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for 10 years. So there's 16 examples of this, but we're only going to look at 3 today that I thought were appropriate for these times. There's a handout on these, I believe, on the website, but I'm forgetting what's in the what's on the site versus what's in the book, so I apologize. So the first one is weaponizing fear and uncertainty. So I was kind of just alluding to that. But what we can do instead is we can acknowledge, name, and normalize collective fear and uncertainty. So that's, again, similar to what I just referenced on page 105. There is incredible relief and power in naming and normalizing fear and uncertainty. We have to find the courage to look back at the people who are looking at us for leadership and say, this is difficult. There are no simple answers. There is pain and fear that would be easy to unload on others, but that would be unfair and out of our integrity. We will walk through this in a way that makes us feel proud. It will be hard, but we will do it together. And I know this from experience. The next one, I think, is something that I would like to see talked about a little bit more in the Salesforce community, and that's rewarding exhaustion as a status symbol and attaching productivity to self-worth. Whereas when you're making that transition on your architect path, it's modeling and supporting rest, play, and recovery. So I want to read you this quote, page 106 to 107. If we want to live a life of meaning and contribution, we have to become intentional about cultivating sleep and play. We have to let go of exhaustion, busyness, and productivity as status symbols and measures of self-worth. We are impressing no one. What's more, according to Brown's research, play shapes our brain, fosters empathy, helps us navigate complex social groups, and is at the core of creativity and innovation. 2 things I would argue are very important as architects. In some ways, it helps our overheated brain cool down. To weave this into office culture, leaders need to model appropriate boundaries by shutting off email at a reasonable time and focusing on themselves and their family. Do not celebrate people who work through the weekend, who brag that they were tethered to their computers over Christmas break. Ultimately, it's unsustainable behavior, and it has dangerous side effects, including burnout, depression, and anxiety. It also creates a culture of workaholic competitiveness that's detrimental for everyone. As Stuart Brown says, the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression. So obviously that's very intense, but I thought was important to read and remember. Collecting gold stars and giving gold stars is the transition from, I want the kudos, and the rewards, to I want to give that reward and praise to other people, which I think is important on our leadership journey as well. I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to go very quickly. And so determining your North Star. So we have values so that we need to identify, because those will help us as leaders. So we don't just show up and be courageous empty-handed. We can show up with values. So you can pick 2 values. There's a list of these on the website, and you can determine these values by, do these define me? Is this who I am at my best? Is this a filter that I use to make hard decisions? And that is going to be challenging because the list of values is long, as you can see here, but you can start with 10 and then narrow it down. But the thing is, if you have 10, then you kind of, if everything's important, then nothing is important, is the idea. So I would encourage you to do this, and I would encourage you to do this in a team as well. And there's guidelines for how to do that. Then we need to face those critical conversations at work. So giving and receiving feedback is really important. So there's a checklist for being ready to give feedback, and that is on the website as well. So if you're in a place where you're able to give feedback, then you are in a better place. Okay, so I'm getting the signal to wrap up. So a few quick recommendations for taking action. It's relatively light in the book, but I have an app that I would recommend called Stoic. We often don't breathe in corporate environments. The app Stoic has a breathing app built in. So does your Apple Watches. Even just taking a deep breath when you're in these intense conversations. The Braving Inventory is online and is a way to help build trust among your team. And this tool, the story I'm telling myself, is in the Netflix special. It's highlighted there really well, and I would really recommend using it. And don't forget daretolead.brenebrown.com. I would love to get your feedback on Twitter in the Trailblazer community. My name's Missy Longshore. Thank you so much. And
thank you so much, Missy, on behalf of everyone who joined and all the organizers. I hope things will turn up pretty quick for you. And thanks a lot for presenting, even though you are going through some personal turmoil. It was an excellent talk.
Thank you. Thanks so much.